I found out my wife had been telling someone else everything I thought she told me. And the worst part? I didn't even notice when I stopped being the person she confided in. If you had asked me what kind of marriage I had, I would have said, solid. Not exciting. Not perfect, but solid. The kind that doesn't break. The kind that survives. I was 41. Married for 14 years, 2 kids. Ethan, 10, and Ava, 7. We lived just outside Denver. Quiet neighborhood. Mountains in the distance if you stood in the right spot on the street. Neighbors who waved. Weekends that all started to look the same. My wife, Lauren, worked from home. Marketing, something flexible that allowed her to be around for the kids. I worked in insurance. Predictable hours, predictable stress, predictable life. And I like that. I like knowing what to expect. I like coming home to the same house, the same dinner routine, the same rhythm. I thought consistency meant stability. I thought stability meant we were okay. Lauren used to tell me everything. That's important. Not big dramatic things. Small things. That's what made it feel real. She'd tell me about a weird email she got out of conversation with another parent at school. Something funny Ava said that I missed because I was at work. She didn't just report events. She shared how things felt. And I used to listen. At least I think I did. But over time, something shifted. Not suddenly. Not in a way that made noise. Just gradually. Lauren would start talking. And I would still be there. But I wasn't really there. I'd be on my phone, half checking emails, scrolling through nothing important. Nodding. Saying yeah. Saying that's crazy. All the right responses. None of the attention. And because I answered her, I told myself I was listening. There's one moment I keep replaying. Not because it seemed important at the time. Because it didn't. That's the problem. We were in the kitchen. Kids in the living room, watching something loud and animated. Lauren was leaning against the counter, talking about a client she had. Something about a campaign, not going well. Something frustrating. I remember her tone more than her words. It wasn't casual. It was vulnerable. The kind of tone people use when they're not just sharing information, but asking to be understood. And I remember what I was doing. Typing. Not even something urgent. Just answering a message that could have waited. At some point, she stopped talking. I didn't notice. Not right away. Then I looked up. What? I said. She was already looking at me. Not angry. Not upset. Just quiet. Nothing, she said. Then she turned away and started rinsing a glass. That was it. No argument. And no follow-up. Just a moment that disappeared. At least for me. After that, things didn't break. They just changed. Lauren talked less. Not completely. Just selectively. She still told me things. Just not everything. And I didn't question it. Because from my perspective, nothing was wrong. We still ate dinner together. Still watched shows at night. Still slept in the same bed. Everything looked the same. So I assumed. Everything was the same. That's the danger. When nothing looks broken, you don't look closer. The second change was harder to notice. Because it didn't feel like a loss at first. Lauren stopped asking me how I felt. That sounds small. But it's not. Before, she'd ask, how was your day? What's going on with work? You seem off, what's up? After a while, she stopped. At the time, I thought that made things easier. Less pressure. Less talking. I told myself, she'd trust me to handle things. But that's not what it was. She just stopped expecting me to open up. The kids filled the space. Ethan would talk about school. Ava would repeat stories until someone reacted the right way. Lauren listened to them. Really listened. Smiling. Asking questions. Engaged. I watched that happen. And something about it felt familiar. Like I had seen that version of her before. Directed at me. Around the same time, she started smiling at her phone more. Not constantly. Just enough. A message would come in. She'd look down. And something in her face would shift. Softer. Lighter. Then she'd catch herself. Put the phone down. Continue whatever she was doing. I noticed it. Of course I did. But I explained it away. Friends. Work. Group chats. Normal. Everything had a normal explanation. As long as you don't look too closely. One night, we were sitting on the couch. Same positions as always. She was on one side, I was on the other. TV on, lights dim. She said something I didn't expect. I feel like I don't really talk to you anymore. I didn't even think. We're talking right now, I said. Same mistake. Same pattern. She didn't argue. Didn't push. Just nodded. Yeah, she said. And looked back at the screen. That was it. Conversation over. Opportunity missed. After that, She stopped trying to fix it. That's the part one didn't understand at the time. I thought things were calmer. Less tension. Fewer conversations that went nowhere. But what I didn't realize was this. She didn't stop because things got better. She stopped because she got tired of trying. A few weeks later, something small happened. So small I almost ignored it. We were getting ready for bed. Lauren was brushing her teeth. Her phone was on the nightstand. A notification popped up. The screen lit up. Just enough for me to see a name. Not a contact I recognized. No picture. Just a name. Daniel. That alone didn't mean anything. Not really. People have coworkers, friends, contacts you don't know. But then the message preview appeared. Just a few words. Enough. You're the only one I can tell this to. My chest tightened. Not sharply. Slow. Like something settling in place. I looked away. Immediately. Because I didn't want to be that guy. The suspicious one, not the paranoid one. There was probably an explanation. There's always an explanation. When you want there to be. I got into bed. Turned off the light. Tried to sleep. But my brain didn't stop. That line kept replaying. You're the only one I can tell this to. That sentence didn't belong to a casual conversation. It belonged to something else. Something closer. A few minutes later, Lauren came into the room. Got into bed. Picked up her phone. The screen lit up her face. I watched from the corner of my eye. Not obviously. Just enough. Her expression changed again. That same softness. That same presence. The one I hadn't seen directed at me in a while. Then she caught herself. Turned the phone slightly away. Like she didn't want me to see. That movement felt different. Not normal. Not casual. Intentional. I closed my eyes. Pretended to sleep. And after a minute, I saw the glow again. Under the blanket this time. Typing. Pausing. Typing again. That's when something shifted in me. Not anger. Not yet. Awareness. Because for the first time, I stopped explaining it away. And started paying attention. The next morning, everything looked the same. Coffee. Breakfast. Kids getting ready. Lauren moving through the kitchen like always. But now, I was watching. Really watching. And once you start noticing something, you see it everywhere. Her phone was always close. Not hidden. Just present. Always within reach. Always face down. That night, I came home a little earlier than usual. The house was quiet. Kids upstairs. Lauren in the kitchen. Phone on the counter. Screen lit. Unlocked. And this time, I didn't look away. The message was already there. Open. Like it had been waiting for me. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't need to. The screen was angled just enough. Close enough that I could read it without crossing that final line. At least, that's what I told myself. Because somehow, reading it like that felt less like betrayal. Like I was just seeing what was already visible. The message said, I wish you were here right now. My chest tightened. Not fast. Not sharp. Slow. Like something sinking. Because that sentence didn't belong to work, that didn't belong to casual conversation. It belonged to something else. Something closer. Something chosen. I stood there for a second. Not moving. Not thinking clearly. Just absorbing it. Then another message came in. Right under it. Talking to you is the best part of my day. That one hit harder. Because it wasn't about a moment. It was about a pattern. A habit. Something consistent. Something that happened every day. And suddenly all the small things I had ignored started lining up. The phone at night, the soft smiles, the way she stopped talking to me, the way she stopped asking. It wasn't absence. It was replacement. I stepped back from the counter, carefully, like I might break something if I moved too fast. And I walked out of the kitchen, because in that moment, I didn't know what to do with what I had just seen. I didn't confront her right away. I know that's becoming a pattern, but it wasn't about fear. It was about understanding. Because once you say it out loud, you can't go back. And I wasn't ready for that yet. That evening, everything played out like it always did. Dinner, kids talking, Lauren listening, really listening, smiling, engaged. I sat there watching her. And for the first time, I didn't see distance. I saw redirection. Everything she used to give me. Attention, presence, curiosity. It was still there. Just not for me. After dinner, the kids went upstairs. Lauren stayed in the kitchen, cleaning up. Same routine, same movements. But now, I couldn't unsee it. The way she checked her phone between plates. The way her expression softened for a split second. The way she turned it face down when I looked up. I stood in the doorway, watching. And then I said it. I saw your messages. She froze. Just slightly. A fraction of a second. But enough. What? She said. Not confused. Just buying time. In the kitchen. Earlier. Silence. Then she turned off the water, set the plate down, and looked at me. What did you see? That question again. Not denial. Not shock. Just control. I saw enough, I said. Her eyes dropped. Then back up. And something shifted, because she didn't try to explain it away. Didn't rush to fix it. Didn't pretend it was nothing. She just stood there, like the truth had already been accepted, just not spoken. How long? I asked. Same question. Different story. She took a breath. A while. That answer. Always the same. Always safe. How long, Lauren? She looked at me. And this time, there was no hesitation. A few months. Of course. Months. Not a mistake. Not a moment. Something that had time to grow. And it's not just talking, I said. Not a question. She shook her head. No. Just that. No explanation. No defense. Just truth. Are you seeing him? That question changed everything. Because it forced a line. She hesitated. Just enough. Then. Yes. Quiet. But clear. I nodded once. No reaction. No explosion. Just confirmation. Because at that point, I already knew. I just needed to hear it. How many times? I don't know. That answer again. I almost expected it. I don't know doesn't mean not knowing. It means not wanting to define it. Do you love him? That question hung in the air. Longer than anything else. Because now, this wasn't about actions. It was about meaning. She looked at me. Really looked. And for the first time, she didn't answer right away. I don't know, she said. Of course. But this time, it felt different. Because now it wasn't avoidance. It was confusion. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Unavoidable. What? I asked. That was the real question. Not who. Not how long. Why? She didn't answer immediately. She wiped her hands on a towel. Looked down. Then said, because I could finally talk to someone. That sentence landed hard. Because it wasn't about him. It was about something missing. You could talk to me, I said. Even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Not the way she meant it. She shook her head slightly. No, she said. You were there. But you weren't really listening. That difference. I had never thought about it. Being there. And being present. Two different things. And I had confused them for years. I tried, she said. And I believed her. Because I remembered. Every small moment. Every quiet attempt. Every time she reached for something deeper. And every time I gave her just enough. To avoid going there. I didn't think it was this bad, I said. She looked at me. And her answer was quiet. I know. That one hurt. Because it meant the gap between us had been invisible to me. But not to her. We stood there. Two people in the same kitchen. Looking at each other like strangers who knew too much. Upstairs, I heard the kids. Laughter. Movement. Life continuing. Normal. Except it wasn't. Not anymore. Does he know about me? I asked. Yes. What did you tell him? That you're a good man. That hit. Harder than expected. And a husband. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I nodded slowly. Then asked the only question that mattered now. Are you leaving? She looked at me. And for the first time, she didn't have an answer ready. I don't know. That answer again. But now, it meant something else. It meant she hadn't decided. Which meant she was already somewhere else. I leaned back against the counter and realized something I hadn't been willing to admit. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't a mistake. This was something that had been building. While I stood in the same house, thinking everything was fine, she stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. I didn't plan this, she said. I nodded. Yeah, I said. Neither did I. And that was the truth. Not clean. Not simple. But real. The worst part wasn't that there was someone else. It was that he got the version of her I used to have. And I didn't even notice when I stopped being the one she gave it to. Neither did I. That was all I said. Because when your wife tells you she didn't plan to fall into something with another man, there's a part of you that wants to reject the sentence completely. It sounds too soft, too forgiving, too convenient. But real life usually is convenient in the ugliest ways. People don't always wake up and decide to wreck their marriage. Sometimes they just keep choosing the path that asks the least of them emotionally. Sometimes they keep stepping toward the person who feels easier to talk to. Sometimes they tell themselves it's harmless right up until it isn't. And standing there in that kitchen, with the sink still full of soapy water and my kids upstairs arguing about whose turn it was in the bathroom, I understood something I really didn't want to understand. This hadn't happened in one night. This had happened in all the nights before it. All the half-listening, all the distracted nods, all the times Lauren tried to tell me something real, and I gave her a version of myself that was technically present and emotionally gone. That didn't excuse what she did at IT, still doesn't. But explain how we got there. I sat down at the kitchen table because I suddenly felt like standing required more confidence than I actually had. Lauren stayed by the counter, drying her hands on the same dish towel she'd been holding for the last 5 minutes. It was such a normal object that that's what struck me. Marriage can be dying in front of you, and there's still a dish towel in someone's hands, still a lunchbox on the counter, still a pair of kids' sneakers by the mudroom door. Collapse rarely looks cinematic from inside the home where it happens. Who is he? I asked. I realized then that somehow we had gotten through the first part without me even asking his name. Lauren looked down. Daniel. Just like that. A name, a person, a real shape, where before there had only been suspicion. And the second she said it, I hated how ordinary it sounded. How do you know him? She took a breath. From one of my client projects. It started through work. Of course it did. That's where most emotional exits begin now, isn't it? Messages that feel productive at first, then personal, then necessary. How long have you been seeing him? That question hit differently than the others. Because talking leaves room for people to hide. Seeing doesn't. Lauren took too long. Lauren. A couple months, she said quietly. A couple months. Long enough to create habits. Long enough to build a separate emotional routine. Long enough for another man to become the best part of her day, while I sat 10 feet away watching television, and thinking quiet meant safe. Did the kids ever meet him? Her head came up immediately. No. That answer was fast enough that I believed it. And weirdly, that mattered to me. I know that sounds small compared to everything else, but once children are physically brought into the orbit of a secret relationship, something in your mind crosses from betrayal into contamination. At least that line was still there. For the moment, I looked toward the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of Ethan moving in his room. Do they know anything's wrong? Lauren's voice got softer. They know we've been off. Off. That word felt insulting. Off as a light switch, not working, a thermostat glitch, a cable box acting weird. Not a marriage, quietly draining out in front of 2 children. I rubbed my hand over my face. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding because I already knew the answer would hurt more than the rest. Did you tell him things about me? Lauren shut her eyes for a second. That was enough. What did you say? That you were distant, she said. That you didn't really talk to me anymore. That I felt alone. Each sentence landed clean. No drama. No exaggeration. Just facts shaped from her side of the marriage. I wanted to reject all of it. Tell her she was rewriting history to justify herself. Tell her she was building a story where I was emotionally neglectful, so she could feel less guilty about becoming emotionally involved with someone else. And maybe part of that was true. People do rewrite history when they're ashamed. But another part of me knew she wasn't inventing the silence in our house, that I had lived inside it too. That I just translated it differently. She called it loneliness. I called it adulthood. That's the difference that ruins people. Did you tell him you were unhappy with me? I asked. Yes. It came out so quietly I almost missed it. And what did he do with that? Lauren looked at me, and for the first time all night, I saw tears gathering that she hadn't decided whether to let fall. He listened. That line again. Not because it was dramatic, because it was simple. Simple beats dramatic every time when it comes to real damage. I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. He listened. Yes. And I didn't. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. The silence handled it. Upstairs, Ava laughed at something. Ethan yelled back. Their voices bounced through the hallway with that same ordinary sibling irritation that had filled this house for years. It made the whole scene below feel even more unreal. A family can sound completely normal from one floor up while the foundation cracks underneath it. I stood and walked to the sink, mostly because I needed to move. Are you in love with him? I asked, still facing away. Lauren took a long time. When I turned back, she was gripping the back of one of the dining chairs. I don't know, she said. Of course. That answer again. I should have expected it, but somehow it still made something in me go cold. Not because it was vague, because it meant she was far enough into this to no longer separate affection from attachment, relief from intimacy, escape from love. People think, I don't know, is the softer answer. It isn't. Not in marriage. I don't know means the question is alive. If she had said no, maybe there would have been solid ground left to stand on. If she had said yes, maybe at least the truth would have been finished. But, I don't know, means your spouse is still emotionally negotiating a reality that includes someone else. And that's a brutal place to be standing. Did you want to leave? I asked. This time there was no confusion about what I meant. Not tonight. Not in theory. In general. Lauren looked at me with an expression I still have trouble describing, that IT wasn't cold, that IT wasn't guilty. It was tired. I thought about what it would be like, she said. That wasn't an answer, but it was worse than one. What does that mean? It means, she looked toward the ceiling, toward the sound of our children's lives continuing overhead. It means I started imagining a different life. There it was. The true betrayal often isn't the messages, IT isn't even the meetings. It's the imagination. The private future your spouse starts building where you are either missing or reduced to an obstacle. What kind of life? I asked. Lauren wiped at one eye with the heel of her hand. One where I didn't feel invisible. That sentence went through me, because it was one of those lines that arrives carrying both accusation and grief. I wanted to tell her she had no right to say that after what she'd done. I wanted to say invisibility doesn't justify betrayal. That loneliness isn't permission. That marriage is supposed to be the place you bring the problem before you bring yourself to someone else. All of that would have been true. But I also knew there was another truth sitting right beside it. For a long time, I had treated not fighting like proof that nothing important was dying. That's a male mistake I think a lot of us make. We think the absence of conflict means health, that we think a quiet house is a stable house, that we think if our wife isn't screaming, then whatever hurts is manageable. Sometimes it just means she stopped trying to hand it to you. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? I asked. Lauren actually looked stunned by the question. I did. I shook my head. No. You said things were off. You said we didn't talk. You said you felt like we were drifting. You did not say you were becoming emotionally involved with another man because I made you feel invisible. She stared at me, and for a second, I thought she might argue. Instead, she said, because every time I tried to tell you smaller truths, you treated them like they weren't urgent. That shut me up, because I remembered all of them. The kitchen, the couch, the little pauses, the night she said, "Can we talk?" And I answered with some version of "after this." The time she tried to hand me a concern while it was still light enough to carry, and I kept setting it down until it grew too heavy for both of us. I sat back down slowly. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I asked, "Does he think you're leaving me?" Lauren didn't answer. That silence was worse than yes, because yes would have at least been clean. No answer is an answer right now, I said. She swallowed. We talked about what might happen. That phrase, what might happen. Adult language is so good at laundering emotional crimes into neutral phrases. You talked about a future. Yes. I nodded once. Then I looked up toward the hallway, just as I heard footsteps. Ava appeared first, rubbing one eye, her hair a mess. Ethan a step behind her, looking annoyed in the way 10-year-old boys always look when their younger sister turns her insomnia into a group activity. "Why are you guys still awake?" Ethan asked. Lauren straightened immediately. "Why are you awake?" she asked too quickly. Ava looked between us. Kids always know. Not details, not names, not betrayal, but temperature, distance, fear. She came halfway into the kitchen and stopped. "Are you fighting?" That question again. Every child's version of emotional weather detection. I looked at Lauren. Lauren looked at me. And in that 1 second, the entire situation shifted shape. Until then, this had still been about U.S. and M.Y. hurt. Her secrecy, the marriage. Now it had witnesses. Not informed ones, but witnesses all the same. And suddenly the ugliest truth in the room wasn't Daniel at IT, was the realization that our children had probably been living inside the consequences of our silence for months. "No," Lauren said softly. "We're just talking." Ethan frowned. "At midnight." "Fair question." Ava stared at us with that small, scared seriousness little kids get when they sense the adults around them are using different words than the room deserves. "Are we okay?" she asked. There it was. Not "are you okay?" Not "what happened?" Are we okay? The family unit. The only thing children care about when the floor starts moving. I crouched down a little, so I was closer to her height. "We love you," I said. That part is not changing. It was the truest sentence I had, and it still felt inadequate. Ava's eyes moved to Lauren. Lauren nodded quickly, tears finally slipping free now. Always, she said. Ethan didn't look convinced, but he was old enough to know when adults were giving the answer they could manage, not the full one. Can we go back to bed? He asked Ava, like getting her upstairs again might somehow reassemble normal. She nodded. Lauren kissed the top of Ava's head. Ethan gave us both one long look, then turned and led his sister back toward the stairs. We listened to their footsteps until the hallway went quiet again. Then the house changed. That's the only way I can explain it. Once your kids ask if the family is okay, everything adult about the fight gets stripped down to its bones. No more romantic ambiguity. And no more, it just happened. No more private moral debate about emotional needs and unmet intimacy. Now there are children in the structure. Now every delay has collateral damage. Lauren sat down across from me and covered her face with both hands. I didn't go to her. I couldn't, because pity and anger were fighting each other in me, and I didn't trust which one would win if I got too close. After a while, I asked, "Are you willing to end it?" She lowered her hands slowly. "What?" "You heard me." I didn't need to clarify what it meant. Daniel, the messages, the separate emotional world, the man who had become the place. She took the parts of herself she once brought home. She looked terrified then, more terrified than she had looked when I first confronted her. And that told me everything. Not because she loved him more than me, but I still don't know if that was true, but because ending it no longer felt small to her. It felt like losing something real. "I don't know what to do," she said. "That's not an answer." "I know. Then answer it." Her voice cracked when she spoke. "I don't want to lose everything all at once." That sentence sat between us like broken glass. Because buried inside it was the truth. She did not see Daniel as a mistake to erase. She saw him as a loss to grieve. And once your spouse sees another person that way, you're not fighting a fantasy anymore. You're standing beside a living attachment. I leaned back in the chair and let that reality land in full. If you're listening to this and your relationship feels off, not dramatic, not explosive, just quietly wrong, don't wait for proof. Don't wait for a glowing phone on the kitchen counter. Don't wait for your wife to become softer with someone else than she is with you. Don't wait for your child to ask if the family is okay. Most marriages don't break in one event. They thin out. They go hollow. They become efficient, polite, manageable. And then one day somebody else steps into the emotional space that should have been protected long before. Lauren betrayed me, that's true. But the thing that keeps me up at night, even now, isn't just that she had another man. It's that by the time I finally paid full attention, my wife wasn't deciding whether she had feelings for him. She was deciding whether the life we built together still felt worth staying in.